Grand dawning, great rising, wherever you are on planet Earth. Welcome to another edition of 360 Info Network, brought to you by the Cleveland Observer. We are going to have an interesting show today, and we would like to invite you to join us on YouTube and Facebook. You'll be able to use the chat there if you have any comments or questions or anything you want to lend to our discussion. We had a guest scheduled for today, but unfortunately, he's under the weather and he's not able to make it. Also, would just like to amplify that this program is brought to you by the Cleveland Observer. The Cleveland Observer has its pulse on what's going on in Cleveland and around the world. So, solution oriented, bringing you information that you can use, information that can edify you. We have with us the founder and the creator of 360 Info Network, Brother Hamtonio. We'll introduce him, and then we have a few announcements, and then we will get into the show. Brother Hamtonio.
All right, right. Welcome again. Thank you guys for tuning in. Yes, our guest was a little under the weather, but we'll bring him back in about a couple of weeks. Brother Sekou. I'm talking to him about some other things as well. So he'll be missed today, but we're gonna have a great conversation today and chop it up and maybe answer some of your questions, or you can place some of your comments on Facebook or YouTube, or like I said, go to the Journey with Hamtonio or Vince Robinson's YouTube page, and stay tuned, stay plugged in. I know we've been digging ourselves out a little bit the last couple of days of the snow, but we made it through, and we made it through Kwanzaa.
All right. So just to let you know what's going on at Larchmere Arts this evening, we have an exhibition by an artist by the name of Mary Kay Thomas. There is a radio program that will be on my YouTube channel. You'll be able to get her story. Ms. Thomas has a grandson who was actually murdered by Cleveland Heights police a couple years ago, and it is really a tragic situation. It hasn't gotten quite the attention and the exposure that the murder of Tamir got, but it was a murder. It does need to be amplified. So if you tune into that program, you get the details on that, but you will also get her life story as an artist, and she's doing great things in the community with young folks and elders as well. So we welcome you to join us at Larchmere Arts tonight. That program will start at 5 o'clock. We're going to have some refreshments, and we will also have art for sale. So we want you to join us, 12726 Larchmere Boulevard, right over there in the heart of the Larchmere district. So as we said, our guest wasn't able to join us today, but we've got a lot to reflect on. Sometimes it's good to just take a moment and breathe, and reflect on
yes. Reflect on that.
Reflect on the past year and reflect on what we would like to see happen in the coming year. This is a year that is bringing expectations of change just based on cosmic energy. The astrologers and the numerologists have examined the number, and they think that there's going to be some upheaval, and there's going to be the people coming back to the top of things. And hopefully, or trustfully, I will say that we will see some of that. So what's on your mind today, Brother Hamtonio?
Yes, I think it's some of that. I just want to put out a couple cautions out there to look for this year. I have a couple predictions, and some things may not manifest to that, but we need to look at what's going to happen in this country coming up. Now, in recapping some of the politics in 2025, you have to look at we had this blue wave again as far as the Democrats in these special elections. They pretty much dominated everything. So you got to ask yourself a question: what's going to be the defense or the offense that the Republicans is going to take at this particular time going into the midterms? So I'm predicting that we're going to see some real drastic implementations of policy, maybe trying to dealing with the voting roll and rent, because you got some Republicans resigning, and you got with that situation, I know it's a lot of Republicans that are putting pressure on Trump and knowing that they may lose their district. So the question is, what is Trump going to do and his cronies in dealing with the vote count and dealing with trying to sustain some of those Republicans who hold their own? Because you got to know that they're complaining. So I'm predicting some real crazy and drastic changes that may come out the gate that may affect and deal with the voting roll and things of that nature. So it's going to be interesting. So I just say keep watch, because I think they're in a desperate situation. So with this desperate situations, he's going to do some desperate things, and it may be the very thing that really get him in the jackpot.
That's interesting. I'm just looking at the way the election cycle happened the last time and all the momentum that the Red Party had. And then you look at the reality of the situation, the fact that you had people who were financing both sides of the election and getting the outcome that they wanted. You had all these folks in the country who were lined up behind a quote unquote nationalist, populist type candidate. And then after a few months and a few executive orders, they realized that the person that they put in office was not really representing them. So as you were saying, there are some Republicans that are resigning, some that aren't really aligned with the interests of the quote unquote new situation in Washington, D.C. You're going to see some pushback from some of the folks who felt that they were betrayed. I just wonder if that's going to be enough to reverse everything that was initiated with that election. When the election happened, all of a sudden we saw pullbacks on funding for the arts, for instance. You had all these Black folk who were fired. They said that something like 75,000 sisters lost their jobs when 47 took office, and they were people in many cases who were more than qualified for the things that they were doing. And really, Brother Antonio, it seems like there was some sabotage involved. Just like, in the previous election cycle that the Republicans won and they put in Ben Carson. And Ben Carson proved himself to be incompetent in certain ways, even though he was this neurosurgeon. Didn't necessarily translate to him being an administrator, an effective administrator. You put Betsy DeVos in charge of the Department of Education. Once again, somebody who wasn't really qualified to do that. And then you saw some, you saw some reversals in terms of the effectiveness of education in this country. So there's a strategic plan, I think, to dismantle government, to make it less effective, to make it less responsive to the needs of the people, and really more responsive to the needs of the business folk who stand to make massive profits because they have someone protecting their interests.
Yeah, absolutely. It seemed like I don't know if it's hard for people to see that and be aware of what's going on as far as in the country is concerned, because it seems to have been always about money, power, and control, and you just got a person that I think is just have a thirst for this power and money and do anything. So, because people ask those questions. Now, I just looked at this morning and looked at the news. I might see if I could bring it up on my phone. The article. I just looked at the news about them Venezuela president being captured. Okay, and I'm like, why? Because we gotta, we can dictate people's regime changes. You know what I mean? If we don't like, if America don't like the current situation of the current president, we can, Nicolas was a Maduro, president of Venezuela. We can overturn him or put pressure on it. Now we got to take into account that as far as Venezuela, when Hugo Chavez was there, he was all for Black folks. He was cool. He was trying to help Farrakhan. He was talked about, as far as helping the Blacks in America, with some of his oil deposits and stuff like that. So they didn't like them. So if this particular guy is kind of like following in his footsteps, I don't know. But America's gonna have problems with it. But they saying here's some of the reasons that they're saying that he's an issue. Now they tell me what this sounds like. Overseeing severe economic collapse, human rights abuses, and dismantling the democratic institutions, leading the widespread international condemnation, sanctions, and criminal charges. Let me see, against him in his regime, His actions include rigging elections, imprisoning political opponents. Oh man, the thing just jumped for me. Hold on. Political opponents, consolidating power, suppressing dissent, and alleged involvement in drug trafficking while his government faces accusations of massive corruption, including embezzlement and from state programs and illicit drug gold removal. Now, do any of those accusations sound any familiar to you at all? You know what I'm saying? So, and they've been doing the same thing, been hypocritical on a lot of stuff, and some of his administrations talking about, Pam Bondi was talking about some of the things that was going on, and Trump has been accused for some of the same thing, and they acting like they're appalled. Oh, this is going on. I don't know. It's just weird to me, man.
So rewind a little bit. You say that they took out the president of
But
Venezuela?
it says captured. It says yeah. So we had some kind of operation that went in. We how they always do, gets a fashion somewhere inside the government to try to stage some type of coup or something to take the president. But it said captured, so I'm assuming they went in with an operation. They even spoke on it. Yeah, some kind of
Yeah.
U.S. operation that went in and now he's captured Nicolas Maduro.
So it's the classic representation of imperialism. You
Mm-hmm.
go into somebody else's country, you say that their leadership is not fit to rule, and then you take them out.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, if you took somebody out, then you're going to put somebody in that is going to serve your interests. And we know that Venezuela is sitting on all that petroleum.
Yes.
So it's not really about politics, it's about petroleum.
Yeah. I mean, when have we been so empathetic on a lot of things that's going around the planet? Anybody saying about Somalia, Sudan? You ain't went into any parts of the Democratic Democratic Republic of the Congo. Any of those loss of lives? You ain't got nothing to say.
Yes.
But a small fraction of people in the Afrikaners in South Africa, you interested in. They're killing them, but everybody else, if you can't see what is actually going on, because I got a friend out in California, he's just blind to this. He don't see none of the power grab, the money grab. You down there going around fleecing other countries, because it's all about making a deal to see how you can set you and your people up for the future. If you can't see that, I don't know. I don't know, brother.
Wow.
And it's the same tactic that they use. Now they're gonna demonize them. They're gonna probably say eating babies and everything else, so they can go in there and do what they want to do.
Yeah. Well, you said it's always about money. And we're in some really different times right now. People hear me talk about precious metals and cryptocurrency, and I would be remiss if I didn't bring this up right now. There is a new financial system that is in place right now. They have flipped the switch and they're moving everything to the blockchain.
Mm-hmm.
That's what's going on right now. And you've got a couple of different situations, and bear with me because I know this is a little deep into the weeds, but these are the things that are happening while everyone is distracted by some of the things that you mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
Last week and the week before, silver and gold hit all-time highs. So an ounce of gold right now is somewhere close to $4,500. An ounce of silver right now is somewhere around $72. And the year started with silver being priced at $28 an ounce. So if you are someone who holds any significant amount of silver, you've seen 156% increase in the value of your silver. The other thing is that you have things like the LBMA in London, the COMEX, and other entities that are responsible for the movement of silver and gold and precious metals around the world and in the United States. And what they have determined is that there is a supply shortage of silver. You have a lot of people who own silver as an exchange traded fund. They own it as paper. In other words, they don't have the silver in their possession, but they have paid for ownership of silver.
Mhm.
So the situation right now is that there is a 356-to-1 ratio of paper to actual silver. That means that if you're in an exchange traded fund and it's something that is about the ownership of silver, there are 356 people who own the same ounce of silver. So if all of those 356 people said, okay, give me my silver, it's not there. Only one person gets the coin. That's the dilemma that they're in right now. So what you've got is these banks that control all this silver on paper and people coming to them and asking for it, and it's not there. So what I understand has happened is that the Federal Reserve has come to the rescue. And what they're doing is they're pumping billions of dollars, billions, not millions. They're pumping billions of dollars into these banks so that they can meet their obligations with cash instead of silver. The
Mm.
silver's not there, but the cash coming from the Fed is there. Now, the other perilous thing about that is that the more money that you create, the less that it's worth. So all of this money coming into the silver market to save the banks is an issue for those of us who pay taxes because the money is coming out of our pockets. So a
Mhm.
wise person right now would be buying as much silver as they could because the projections are that silver is going to probably double in price within the next year or so. So
Mhm.
this is just a word to the wise. Pay attention to the markets because there are some catastrophic things happening within that marketplace right now. And this is just as bad, if not worse, than 2008. But this is a narrative that's not being out there on mainstream media because they're allowing the powers that be to manipulate things behind the scenes so it doesn't appear that we should lose any confidence in the financial system. But it's falling apart and they're coming up with ways to try to mitigate the damage, but
Yeah.
there's nothing they can do. They need silver to make solar panels. They need silver to make electronics. Silver is the best conductor of electricity on the planet. And that's why the entities that need that silver to make their products are going to be willing to spend and pay as much for it as they can or as they have to, because they have to have that silver in order to create their products. Another thing about silver is that you don't just have silver mines. You know, when they mine for copper, when they mine for other kinds of things, they also pull up the ore that has silver in it. So it's kind of like a secondary operation. So there are limited deposits of silver on the earth, and there's a limited ability to pull that out of the earth. So again, you have a significant shortage of silver. So I hope folks hear what I'm saying. You know, if
Mhm.
there's any way that you can purchase silver right now, you definitely want to be doing that. And there is a certain level of urgency because it's only a matter of time before everything explodes and you know the price skyrockets and you weren't there to take advantage of it. So that's just my word to the wise. I'm not a financial advisor. This is information, education, and entertainment only. You know, seek professional advice if you're interested in investing. But I'm telling you, silver is definitely something that you should be looking at. And
Yeah.
then there are also opportunities in cryptocurrency. And I know, Brother Antonio, you're involved in a platform that's giving you returns. I think it's like doubling money in a certain period of time.
Mhm.
There are those kinds of platforms. And, you know, in the world of cryptocurrency in general, there are significant opportunities. The one that I've been telling folks about is a token called XRP. But Brother Antonio, you want to talk a little bit about what you're doing without giving it away completely? But if folks are interested, they can reach out to you.
Yeah. It's a platform that I think that really, I think they really got something going to where, it's AI, and a lot of people using AI at this particular point to go into the market and trade. So it's a platform that is easy for anyone to do. You really don't have to know a whole lot about crypto. It's just a matter of copying and pasting and letting the AI go in there and do what it does. But the platform is set up to where you're getting 60 some percent return on each trade that you do, and a matter of 45 days to 60 days, as of what Dr. Frazier was talking about when he was on the show, that your money would double. So it don't matter what you put in there. If you put $1,000 in there, and you're gonna, in 2 months it's going to be $2,000, and so on. You put 10 in it, and in 2 months it's going to be $20,000, and go so on. For each month. So I've been watching it closely, and it's been doing what it's been projected to do, and but platforms like that, I think, is going to be cropping up, for people to get in it, because that's exactly where they're going. This is it's a global shift. It's a global money shift. Some talk about 2030 as being really coming into online, you know, and we talked about it a little bit with our good brother that he was talking about the criminal. What's I forgot the brother's name that you had on last week.
And Mbwebe Ishan.
Gordon, yeah, yes, yeah. We talked about it with him a little bit as well, and some say they may start implementing some things even sooner. But you can see that this global piece is going on. Like 20 some countries in Africa, got their own crypto, and they all are lining up and moving. So, it's basically how I look at this whole thing is you can classify anything as being valuable. It depends on how they market it. They could say this Kango hat is valuable. If you had, uh, media coming on saying these Kangos are valuable and is valuable, guess what? Everybody be getting Kangos, and Kangos would be, worth something. So, right now at the particular time, we got over, was it, thousands of different crypto, but they said, one of the crypto geniuses said that the best type of crypto to get is one that has a function of doing something like XRP, that is going to be able to make transactions, in real time. So it's doing something, it's making something happen. So those are the type of crypto situations you want to get in. But even when, like, back in October, when they took a lot of the crypto out of the market, like $1 trillion, whatever, the platform that I was on didn't even get affected by it. Because the AI went in and sought out, different advantages as far as the crypto, and we still came out making money. So it's a
Yeah.
decent platform for right now. So I would suggest it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I just wanted to draw a big picture of cryptocurrency in general. Bitcoin was created several years ago, and there's speculation that it may have actually been created by the government because they saw what was coming down the pike.
Mm.
There are no official accounts. Nobody knows exactly who did it. They say that some dude named Satoshi created it,
Right, right.
but there's speculation that this is something that has been in the works for a long time. But what I will say is that most people on the planet don't really know about it or understand it.
Hmm.
And I think that's really by design, because when people don't understand things, they don't deal with them. 4 or 5 years ago, and we've talked about this on the show, but I have to reiterate it. The people who were managing the money on the planet, the asset managers, they were pushing against crypto.
Hmm.
They were saying that it's used for illicit purposes. You had Christine Lagarde, who runs the European Central Bank right now, and she was a principal figure in one of those other three-letter institutions, but she was bad mouthing crypto. And then you had people like Senator Elizabeth Warren, who was bad mouthing crypto, and her girlfriend Maxine Waters was bad mouthing crypto, and the Biden administration was totally against cryptocurrency.
Hmm.
Um, but then a paradigm shift took place. And then you had Larry Fink, who is running the World Economic Forum and is also sitting atop BlackRock, which is the most prominent asset manager on the planet, which is managing almost $12 trillion in assets right now. You had him doing about face. You had the person that was running, it was either Vanguard or Fidelity, and he was saying, you know, we don't have any plans to do anything with cryptocurrency. And then within a matter of months, he had completely changed his tune. And the reason that they're doing this is because they understand that the new situation is more efficient, it's less costly, and it's a better way to do business than what they had before. Before, they had something called the SWIFT system. And, you know, it's a communication system. So banks could communicate with other banks and send messages to each other and move money around the planet. But what would happen is you would move money from one bank to another bank to another bank. And every time it moved, there was a fee involved because the middleman always going to take his cut. And then you got the blockchain. And with the blockchain, it's a peer-to-peer situation. So you have a wallet, somebody else has a wallet. They give you a wallet address. You send your cryptocurrency to that other wallet address, and there's no intermediary. And so instead of
it's secure.
Yeah. And instead of taking 3 to 5 days, it happens in 3 seconds. So if you got $2 or $3 million to move, and it's going somewhere where when it gets there, it's going to make money, but you had to wait 3 to 5 days, that's 3 to 5 days that your money wasn't working for you. But now that it takes place in 3 seconds, then you got 5 days, 3 days, 4 days, 5 days of productivity coming from your money. So that's when the light bulb went on and they said, hey, this works better. And not only that, their customers are saying, we want this because it benefits us. The banks had to find a way to get involved in it. So now what they're doing is they're moving over to a system that will allow them to hold your cryptocurrency. Okay. So it's really kind of the same paradigm because, you know, when the bank has your money, it's not your money, it's their money. You know, and the whole idea around this new financial system, they call it DeFi, decentralized finance. The whole issue here is to allow you to be your own bank. See, because that's what they do. You know, the folks who have money and trusts and all that, the Rockefellers and the families that have controlled resources for so long, they act as their own bank. If you remember last week, Brother Ishangi was talking about whole life insurance. You know, again, strategies that we can use to grow wealth instead of being the consummate consumers that we are, you know, because we don't really invest our money to the extent that we could or should. We don't pass wealth down from generation to generations because we have this liquidation mentality. You know, grandma and grandpa got a house, and then, you know, mom and dad, they don't want to be responsible for that house. So when grandma and grandpa transition, they say, well, let's get rid of it. And then they sell it and they take the little money that they got from the sale, if they didn't have to go through probate and all of that. And then they go out and buy something, you know, which is totally against our paradigm, because the whole idea is your freedom is tied to the ownership of land. You know, when you have land, you can create things, you can generate commerce,
and you can eat off of it.
You can feed yourself, you can do all these things. But, you know, we've walked away from owning land. We've walked away from growing things. We've walked away from investing. You know, our grandparents, our great-grandparents, they knew what to do with some money. My mother was telling me last week when I went to visit her how her father used to put money aside, but he didn't put it in the bank.
Mhm.
And when they had needs, all he had to do was go to his stash, you know.
Mhm.
So,
They say that's what saved us during the depression and the crash.
oh
Because
yeah,
we had it in the mattress.
we had it in the mattress, because they had that whole fractional reserve system. I don't know how they're doing it now, but I know with the fractional reserve system, you would bring $100 to the bank. The bank had $1,000 in credit, and they could lend that stuff out.
Mhm, mhm, mhm,
But the money wasn't actually created. And so
mhm.
now, fast forward to 2026, they're not making pennies anymore. You're looking at doing transactions with your phone, read a QR code, no cash, no coins, electronics, but we have a really fragile infrastructure, Brother Antonio.
Mhm. See what I think too. It's funny, directly and somewhat indirectly. Culture plays a role in that. A lack of culture plays a role in that, because when you have a lack of culture like that, what it does, you becomes dependent on other folks. You just be consumers. You don't build your own infrastructure and things of that nature. So you just going around supporting everything and everybody else, and so you become that big consumer, and you don't do anything. And so again, we was taught all those economic, and we were not taught all those economic tricks to get us to the place where we want to go and need to go. But again, I would say what Dr. Amos Wilson say: if we don't teach our children to fix our problems of the day, then we just spinning around in the same cycle. So if we have an economic problem like that, if we have an investment problem like that, if we have a problem with lack of resources and land and things like that, we should be training and teaching our children for the next generation to pick up the slack in reference to them. But if we don't put up institutions or anything to fix and to curb that problem, then what are we doing? You
Yes.
know, you just sitting and basting in the same situation. So it's a consciousness problem. It's a cultural problem. Culture and consciousness go together, and I'm hoping that I see some movement of Black folks starting to do that and acquire wealth and think about generational wealth and passing those things down. But with your example, something that I've written about, wouldn't it be nice to give your kid a house that is free and clear? Then while they're going through school or college, they're not paying a mortgage. Could you think about it yourself? If you was able to live, 10, 12 years free of rent, and you had a decent job making money, what impact could you be? And then look at the leverage that house can do, and send them to school, just like that insurance policy. You can borrow off of it, send them to college, do some of the things that you need to do with. So, and that's why we are at the bottom of the pole, the totem pole, when we're talking about wealth.
Yes. We have a question from Brother Gerard. He wants to know about some of the gold and silver exchanges and crypto platforms. And I'm happy to give you some information on the other side of the break. We'll talk about that when we get back.
Yeah. I give them one company that I deal with, where you get the physical gold. Is called Provident Silvers. Provident. Check that out. You can get anything from platinum to everything on it. And I back in the past, got some coins and stuff for them. But try Provident.
Yeah. I got a couple more recommendations. I'm going to do it on the other side of this. And just remind everyone that you're listening to 360 Info Network right here on AM 1490 WERE. We are simulcasting live to Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. So you can join us on any of those platforms. And we would happy to get your comments. It's always good to hear from the folks who are listening and viewing us online. So check us out, Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. You can go to The Journey with Hamtonio, and you can check out 360 Info Network. You can also go to my Facebook page and to my YouTube channel, and you can check it out there. And then you can go to our respective channels where the shows are archived. So if you missed it, you can see it at some other point. We got a lot of great shows that are lined up for you in the coming years. So stay tuned, and we will be right back.
Cleveland has stories worth telling and voices that deserve to be heard. That's why the Cleveland Observer is proud to sponsor 360 Info Network with Vince Robinson and Antonio on AM 1490 WERE, where truth, culture, and conversation come together. Each week, host Vince Robinson and Antonio open the door to powerful discussions, from the arts and community history to the issues shaping our neighborhoods today. And the Cleveland Observer is right there with them, shining a light on the people and movements building a stronger Cleveland. Tune in to 360 Info Network and visit CLEobserver.com to read, watch, and share more stories that inform, inspire, and unite our community. Because together, we are Cleveland's voice.
So it's CLEobserver.com. You can go there and you can check out the newspaper. They also have a physical copy of the newspaper that you can get as well in different locations around the city. Cleveland Observer is doing some great things in our community. Before we took the break, we were talking about places where you can get precious metals. Brother Antonio mentioned a spot called Providence.com, I'm saying.
Provident, yeah, with a T, yeah, Provident.
Provident.com. That's one of the places that you can go. There are a couple of platforms that I'm connected to right now, and I will drop my email address in the chat for those who are interested in taking advantage of it. I'm not going to say the names of them because they utilize affiliate marketing, and I don't know that I would necessarily want to put it out there. But one of the platforms that I go to allows you to purchase precious metals at cost. So you don't have to pay the hefty premium that some of the other websites that you go to. Typically, you might have $5 or $6, maybe $7 or $8, $9, $10 over the spot price that you have to pay for precious metals. But with this particular platform, you get them at cost. You pay a membership fee, but with that membership fee, you get that discount, and you also are able to derive commissions from anyone that you share this platform with. So it's something that makes a lot of sense because the product is money. It's not like you're buying something that's going to stack up in the garage. You know, you're not buying mangosteen juice or some type of vitamin or supplement or something like that, something that will stack up as you accumulate it because you're a distributor. I know it personally because I've been there before, and it was just a fruitless activity. But in this situation, you can purchase something that has value, something that will gain value, and something that will pay you. There's another platform that we use, and it is called United Precious Metals Association. And what they allow you to do is they allow you to do the equivalent of staking, which on the cryptocurrency side of things is you let somebody hold something that you own and they pay interest on you having it. So with this situation, I don't know if people know about gold backs. Are you familiar with gold backs, Brother Lynn?
I don't think so. Gold backs.
Gold backs are they have gold in them. It's like a bill,
Okay.
but it has gold content in it.
Yeah.
And this particular platform allows you to lease your gold back. So you purchase the gold backs, you let them hold the gold backs, and then they pay you 2% for the entire year. But the way that they do it is they give you 2% and they divide it by 12. So every month you get paid something. So let's say you had $100,000 worth of gold in your account. Well, 2% of $100,000 is $2,000. So you would get a 12th of that $2,000 every month. Plus, you have the fact that you're owning gold that's going up in value. So current projections are that it's not long before we will see $10,000 gold. So you got this gold in your account, and it's worth all this money. Plus, you're getting the dividends that you can reinvest into what you own, so your pot grows over time. So it just, I mean, it makes perfect sense, you know, and you can do the same thing with gold and silver as well. So these are two platforms that are performing quite well. And because of the shortages that we have with silver right now and the demand for gold, because countries and banks are buying it up because they want to be able to back currency with a commodity. And they see that the US dollar is losing value because they keep creating so much more of them. On December 1st, they welcomed back quantitative easing. They basically, they didn't call it quantitative easing, but that's what it is. And they're lowering interest rates, which makes more money available to be invested in things. So this is one of the ways that they want to try to rescue the economy. You know, the tariffs that the president has been implementing, one of the things that they're intended to do is to stimulate production on the United States side of things, because there's a trade imbalance and the America is importing more than it's exporting. So in order to strengthen the economy, they're encouraging businesses to do business here in America. See, so they've got different things trying to
They
do.
got what now? What did you say that again? Say that again. They got
I'm
what?
saying they're trying to stimulate businesses
Okay.
to create products that they can export and perhaps repair the trade imbalance.
Yeah, yeah. I guess that's the theory of it. Yeah, that's a theory of it. But I'm just wondering if that ship sailed sailed already. You know what I mean? Because of what they did with China and everything being, all the manufacturers going to where the lower wages is. I'm just wondering if we could ever get that back and deal with the cost of everything. You know, I don't know. You know, that's the battle that they're, you know, and what you just said, that's the theory. If it can work like that, I don't know.
Well, you know, the reality is that these companies have been doing business in other countries because they could take advantage of lower labor rates. You know, so that it's always been about the bottom line.
Right.
You know, it's always been about the bottom line, and it will continue to be about the bottom line. But then you have countries like China, and China is responsible for 70% of the refining of silver on the planet. And what they did as of this week is they're saying, we're not going to export silver. They're shutting the gates on moving that silver out. And as a result of that, they're creating even more of a demand for silver. So I'm just, you know, I hate to be effusive in this, you know, but it just so happens that I made some moves that allowed me to get a significant amount of silver. So I'm excited just because of the fact that I see what's on the wall, the handwriting on the wall, and I want as many people to know, you know, it's not too late. If you jump in right now, before it shoots up exponentially as it is going to, you'll be in a position to have intergenerational wealth that you can pass down to those who come behind you.
Here's the thing about this job situation in labor. You know, AI been getting a lot of conversation, you know, and dealing with the UBI, you know, the universal basic income and loss of jobs and all that particular thing. You know, I'm just, when you were saying that, I was thinking that what way, because right now our wages is too high in order to make those products affordable in this country. That's why you went to places like China. That's why Africa is going to take off the way it is, because the wages for the labor is going to be cheap to make those particular things. Now, if you're trying to bring all those businesses back and create those things here, you know, who's going to work for $7 an hour? You know, who we have is going to work for $7 an hour. Now, if you have the threat, and this is me just thinking here, if you have the threat of AI taking your jobs, will you be willing to, you want nothing or you want $7 an hour? So that's a way to break the back of this whole wage situation war that we have over in this country, you know. And one of those one of my predictions too is about you know, these farmers suffering the way they are, you know, and in the bad deals that in the tariff situation and China redirecting this soy crop to South America and all that type of stuff. What these farmers going to do, you know, and with the immigration policies that we have right now in this country, what the farmers going to do? don't be surprised if you see the brothers back out in the field again. They emptied the jails up. have my brothers back in the field again, but I'm just saying. So I don't know. Something to look at.
You know, brother, I watched a video yesterday of somebody making shrimp.
Making shrimp.
Making shrimp. Yeah, making shrimp. They have a process and they use different ingredients and everything, and they have these molds that gives you the perfect shape of the shrimp. They have all these ingredients and they put these things together. So when you get the shrimp, it chews like shrimp. They flavored it so that it tastes like shrimp. So I'm just thinking, you know, as you talk about farmers, I'm thinking, well, you know, we've got these 3D printers and we've got all these different ways, you know, that they can create stuff. You know, I've seen years ago, I saw them making lettuce, you know, just manufacturing lettuce. You know, the Chinese were doing this, manufacturing lettuce. So when you get that, you know, vegetable fried rice and it's got some bits of lettuce, it's not really lettuce. So I'm thinking if their processes are so sophisticated that they can manufacture food and fool you with it, what do they need farmers for?
Yeah, because you see how they they're making their meat in the labs and stuff as well. So the question we need to be asking ourselves, where are we going with this and why? Is it all about dollars? Or do they know something that we don't know about shortages, something cosmically? Is we having a world drought? Is that why they want to make their own, create their own seed, in order to sustain those kind of harsh conditions and still grow and have food? I mean, is there something going on that we don't know, or is this all about money?
I think it's all about money and it's all about control.
Okay.
You know, one of the prevalent themes right now is the idea of depopulation. You know, we've been talking about this for years. You know, Brother Ishangi talked about eugenics last week. And that's just basically plans to kill people. So when you look at what's happening in America, you see a definite war at play, and they're trying to kill people. And well, not trying to, they doing it. I mean, you know, let's just be real about it. They are doing it. But two things that they use scarcity and they use fear. You know, a few moments ago, you talked about wages. Well, wages have been used as a means to control people. You know, it's unrealistic for anybody to think that they could survive for 40 hours at $7.25 an hour. You can't do it. You can't pay the rent. You can't buy gas. You can't clothe yourself. You can't put food on the table. So people who make $7.25 an hour many times have another job, or they have some type of side hustle. But what they have done historically is that they have tied wages and inflation to each other. So back in the day, we got cost of living adjustments, you know, so when inflation kicked in, and let's say inflation was 2%, and then you got a 2% raise on your job, then you basically treading water because everything is even. But if you have 10% inflation and 2% wage increase, you
ain't doing it.
you can't do it. And they look at how long the minimum wage has been what it has been, you know, so they have been very strategic in using that as a means of control. And what they do, this is what separates rich dad from poor dad. You know, poor dad was trading time for money. Rich dad had money that was making money.
Right.
Rich dad go to bed at night, wake up the next morning, he got more money than he had before he closed his eyes the night before. But poor dad got the same job, the same wage, the same poverty that goes from year to year to year to year.
Well, he got to put in the labor. The only way he did change his income would change if he put in more labor, put in more time. You know, so he got, you know, so he's in that ratio, that cycle of ratio of, you know, only way you can get more money is to put in more of your time. So how much more of that do you want to give up?
Yeah.
You know, where you don't have a life, you know, all you're doing is, you know, that cycle, vicious cycle of the work, you know, get up, work, and things of that nature. But like I say, we again, as a people, we want to talk those particular, you know, things and how to advance ourselves like that. And so again, what we're going to do, we're going to continue this in the future, or we're going to do somebody. But I don't know if it's too late at this point from where we at. I mean, far as actually establishing something concrete like that, I guess with with the cryptos coming up, with the global shift, with the AI, where we at. I guess maybe getting that back down to the basic of having land, foundational stuff. I think that would always be the key, of having something tangible that you can hold and put your hands on.
Well, the fact of the matter is we live in an information age. We have access to so much information, so much more than we did before. And so we can't use ignorance as an excuse. I mean, you got things like Chat GPT, Grok, other AI platforms that you can go in and ask just about anything and get some answers. You could go on a Chat GPT and say, how can I make some money today? And it will give you answers. And it's up to you to act upon that. But we're so lazy that we don't want to spend the time. The video was an hour long. Oh, I ain't got time for that.
Oh, the football. I'm watching the football game.
The Cavs playing tonight. I
ain't going to that seminar.
I'm not going to the seminar. There are so many other things that you can do, but it goes back to what Brother Fraser was sharing with us a few weeks ago. And he was just talking about the value of time, and the fact that you can be more deliberate about how you spend your time, or you can waste your time, but time really is the most valuable commodity that you have. So we just have to tell ourselves right now that, or ask the question, what can I do to be more productive? Because again, just coming back to the information, if you don't have a financial education, you can get one. If you don't know how to grow food, you can get with somebody who knows how to, and they can show you. You can go to YouTube University and learn all kinds of things. That's my go-to, bruh. The simplest things, like I have to figure out how to attach a wire to my canvas wrap so that they can be hung in an art show on Monday. So I just went to YouTube and asked the question, how do you blah, blah, blah? Boom, there it is. Somebody's showing you how to do it. So for someone to say, I don't know is not an excuse anymore.
Well, what is the brain fog, Vince? And this is some of the things that I've been touting for the longest. What is the brain fog there? Some people would argue, and they would have a decent argument in saying, okay, the information is right there. All you got to do is seize it and take it. But why is it happening? What is the brain fog? What is stopping folks from doing it? Is it complacency? They're comfortable? Is it fear? What is it? With the information being there, what you just described. Why is some people not taking advantage of those particular things?
Yeah, and I have an answer for that.
Okay.
And I want to talk about it on the other side of the hour, because this is something that came to me during the pandemic. And there were scientists, psychologists, and others that were talking about this. But just to make it simple, if someone tells you a lie repeatedly, over and over and over again, after a while, you begin to accept the lie as a truth.
For sure.
And we have been lied to for so long that we think that what we're being told is the truth, and it's not. And again, just going back to this age of information, now the information, the history, it's all bubbling up to the top. The things that they tried so hard to keep out of the history books, you ain't got to open up the book anymore. All you got to do is turn on TikTok. And there's somebody telling you, those brothers that had those petroleum companies, they got beat down by the Rockefellers and the other folks. And now you can use AI to create imagery so that you can not only hear about it, you can see it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so the excuse that we used to have about not knowing, we don't have that excuse anymore. If you look hard enough and far enough, you can find the answers to anything. And I mean, really anything. And then the other thing is that we have resources in our community. You know, we have the Wayne Chandlers, we have the James Browns, we have the Nana Kwame of the seconds, we have the George Frasers. You know, we have people who have life experience that has taught them things that we can learn from. So we got everything that we need for success. We just have to tie into it.
Something that I thought about some years ago. Again, they may come up because our good brother Ray Higgins was trying to do it. You got to create some type of village to have all those networks in. You're part of that networks. We got a stream that deals with health. We got a stream that deals with economics. We got a things that deals with legal, law, politic type of stuff. You got all your spokes in the wheels that make those foundational things, almost like what Claude Anderson talked about, those pillars that you have, and you have those resources in your circle that you are a part of, that you can go to and get some good advice, barter, and do everything that you need to do in order to sustain yourself and educate yourself. We need to create that village again.
All right. Need to create the village. Just want to remind everyone that you're listening to 360 Info Network right here on AM 1490 WERE. And we are happy to extend this program a few more moments. On the other side, live to YouTube and Facebook, you can go to The Journey with Hamtonio. You can go to Vince Robinson's Facebook page, and you can go to the YouTube channel and check out this broadcast. We'd also like to thank our engineer, Tone Harley. He's been doing it for us for years. It's been about three or 4 years that Brother Tone has been at the helm for us, and we really appreciate all that he does to bring 360 Info Network to you. As always, know yourself, love yourself, be yourself. Do everything you can to make today your absolute best day. Peace, everyone.
Peace, peace, peace.
All right, it's 12 o'clock noon right here on 360 Info Network, brought to you by the Cleveland Observer. We're just having some conversation, and we got a few folks chiming in. We'd like to invite you to contribute to the program with a question or a comment or some insight that you'd like to share with us. You can go to the YouTube channels and put those things in the chat. You can also go to the 360 Info Network Facebook page and make a comment, and we'll be able to see it, and we'll also be able to share it with you. So just answering Brother Gerard's question, I hope that he got what he needed. Again, I'm going to put my email address in the chat, Brother Gerard, and you can reach out to me, and I will send you some links to get you started. It's a great program that will bring you returns. And like I said, you got the silver squeeze going on right now. It's going to be important for you to tune in, to plug in, and to take advantage of the things that are coming down the pike. There is a silver shortage on the planet. No question about it. There's a silver shortage. And if you purchase now, you'll be able to hold that silver, watch it grow in value. And if you want to take profits at some point, you'll be able to do that. And again, this is not financial advice, information, entertainment, education only. But trust the brother. You get some silver right now, and a year from now, you will definitely be smiling and be thanking somebody for passing that along to you. Antonio?
Yes, I want to switch gears a little bit, or at least just plug in this particular. I've seen something very interesting on YouTube yesterday about health. We're going to touch it on health a little bit, because you can't do any of this stuff if your health is whack. You know what I mean? If you're on your back and your health is whack, then you're in trouble. We can't do anything. So we gotta, that's principle number one, getting your health together. We gotta stay strong, because we in his age now, and we losing a lot of people. Like my good brother Moses, on Moses Appliance on St. Clair, just was talking to the brother. The brother had a mass heart attack, so condolences to him and his family and his brother Bernard and Andre and them. So we have to do that. So again, some people would say, it's a conspiracy all with the whole health industry, on how they're keeping people sick. They expecting pathology and creating pathology. Ask yourself a simple question. We supposed to be so advanced and things of that nature. How come America during the pandemic lost more people on the planet than anybody? Shouldn't your antennas be going up? Shouldn't you be saying something is strange for that? When they was looking for Africa to be decimated, and they lost almost less than anybody, with that 1.4 billion people over there. You barely you ain't even got over 100,000 people that's died in Africa doing that, but you got over 1 million and growing still in this particular country. So I'm saying that to say that there's a conspiracy as far as that is concerned. Could it be a part of that whole population control piece? Something to think about, something to be aware of. So what I'm suggesting is saying one of the documentaries I seen last night, which I always been referring people to, Dr. John Campbell. He's one of the lone survivors of still out there on YouTube talking about these particular things. Why? Because he's stating the facts. He's getting information right from the CDC's web page and these peer-reviewed articles that's from virologists and people skilled in those matters all over the world, and you can't refute it. So that's why they haven't yanked him yet, in reference to. So anyway, he just come up and talked again about some of the effects of ivermectin, and they call Fenbin. Look at it. Look at his YouTube channel. I want to say Fenbizole or something to that nature.
Fenbendazole.
Fenbendazole. Yes. And talking about those particular two things and how it helps with cancer. See, if you remember and you go back, Dr. Hilda Clark talked about parasitic situations that is related to cancer. And so I had recall back, and this was years ago. So those particular two entities deals with parasites. And now funny that people are getting good results in reference to cancer. So I strongly suggest that you look up Dr. John Campbell. And if, because we know that stuff is running rapidly. He brought us some examples where people was dealing with stage 4 cancer. And Fenbin brought him back around. He's pleading and saying, why aren't we doing more research on this? Why isn't UK and the government doing research on this? There were small fragments of studies that in previously that you guys jumped on and changed the whole world with, and using, and you seeing how they identified ivermectin. Ivermectin was one of the safest drugs on the planet. It won the Nobel Prize for being the one of the safest drug on the planet. Look it up. But they demonized it. So I'm asking you, look them up. Look them up, because we got people that are suffering. This prostate stuff is running crazy and rapid in our neighborhoods, along with the other cancers as well. So if you got a fighting chance, look it up, or you might, know for yourself, or it might be somebody in your family that's suffering with that.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of information that is out there, and I mentioned before we broke to our online platform that I wanted to share something about, what happened 4 or 5 years ago that kind of bubbled to the surface. And that's the concept of a mass psychosis. In other words, you have a whole bunch of people who are in a state of hypnosis. And when you look at the way we're socialized, the way we're programmed, it's not impossible for folks to be confronted with the truth and not accept it. And it just goes back to that lie being told so many times over and over and over again. Just like the notion that we should eat 3 meals a day.
Mhm.
Who wrote that rule? Who said that you got to eat 3 times a day? Who said that you got to drink 3 glasses of milk? Who said that you're supposed to have so many servings of eggs or meat or whatever? But we accept those things as truth. When we go back in our history, we're working in the field all day. We didn't take a break, go into the kitchen, put some eggs and bacon and toast, and we didn't.
The house Negro didn't call. Hell, okay, y'all, come on in and get lunch.
we didn't do that, and so we've been socialized into certain things and think that these things are normal. People get up in the morning, they got a coffee pot sitting on the stove, and the coffee pot is programmed at 8 o'clock, start brewing. You get up, 8:10, your coffee's done. First thing you do is grab a cup of coffee, and then you start a day that has been compromised by the fact that you did something that wasn't physically in your best interest. And we accept this as being normal. We have the birthday party. What do? They bring out this great big ass cake with candles on it, and this is something that we're socialized to do, but we don't even understand that we're participating in a ritual. We don't know what it means when you blow that candle out. We've seen everybody else do it, so we just blow out the candles. But there are spiritual implications to blowing out those candles. There are spiritual implications involved in even observing the day as a birthday. We're not cognizant of that because we've been socialized into accepting those things as being normal things. Yes, our conversation with each other, same thing. We use words. We're casting spells. We don't understand the implications of what we're doing because we're socialized into doing those things and accepting those things. And until we wake up and start questioning things that we do and understanding the reason that we do them, then we'll stay in that same trap and keep doing the same behaviors.
Absolutely, man. You tapped into a conversation that I've been trying to have with people and let them know. That's why I think we got to rethink everything that we have been taught. Everything, people. For number one, the European thinks totally different from you. His ideology, his concept on God, earth, nature, family, all of that is different. And you're living under the ideology of some foreigners, some people that is different from you. So you have to question all those particular things. And you don't know, and you hit it right on top of it. I was just saying, this unseen world that we're talking about, this energy, you don't know what energy you giving to these things, his holy days. For Thanksgiving, the Indians are mourning. The Trail of Tears and all that stuff. They are mourning, and we out here having a feast. You don't know the energy you're giving. We sit up here giving this energy to a deaf season. Those Bible scholars that want to talk about the first of the year and the beginning of the year, and get mad and get upset if they don't have the black eyed peas to go along with it, and the things, the traditional things and don't even know even what some of that stuff, those traditions mean. The rabbit and the egg and all that old type of stuff, and you don't know what energy that you are giving these particular things and holidays, and you just going right along with it. The Bible tell you in Exodus, spring is the beginning of the year, coming out of Egypt. The beginning of the month for you Israelites is in April. And then if you start going on, if you really get deep in it with the Bible scholarship, then you would know that John the Baptist was 6 months older than Jesus. And then one of them was born in the 6th month. So it depends on where your point of reference is. You're going to start and call the 6th month. Then you can kind of, get a close proximity of actually when Jesus was born. because you got the right starting point. You see what I'm saying? So you all off. You know, like Wayne was talking about, all the days was 28 days. But he throw you in there with this 30, this 31, and this 20, got you all off track. You know what I mean? And now you in the death season worshiping. It's our people did things for reasons, you know, on how the cycles and the cosmic and the earth and all that stuff evolve. They have a meaning. So you don't know what energy that you are giving these, you know, Halloween and 4th of July, dude, you weren't even free. You weren't even a full human being right there, and you celebrating that. So but that's dealing with, that's walking in a whole nother path. That's walking in with understanding vibrations, frequencies, and what you say in your mouth and those unseen words. So you walking in a whole nother level when you start thinking in those terms, or like you said, Vince, what you speak and what comes out of your mouth, how that affects the energy and everything around you. See, you're operating on another plane when you start thinking like that.
Yeah. Well, you know, you brought up what they call Thanksgiving, and you pointed out the ironies that are involved in that specific holiday. But one thing that I picked up within the past week was just the significance of the turkey. The significance of the turkey and why it's called turkey. When you get into the etymology of that situation and the symbolism of the turkey and all of that, if you knew the truth about that, you would be saying, I ain't eating turkey on the fourth Thursday of November. You wouldn't do that anymore. But again, we're socialized into accepting, and we're told what we should do and what we should say and how we should act and all those other kinds of things. And it has nothing to do with who we are. You know, that's the real critical issue.
And nothing to do with the creator and the relationship that's going to advance you in any kind of way and do you good.
Yeah. Yep. So it all comes back to us, and we will say it over and over again. It all comes back to us remembering who we are. You know, because we've been socialized into a place of forgetting. And when we know who we are and what we are, that's the key point, what we are, because we don't even know. We'll be walking around here singing, I'm only human.
Only human.
Only human. And so you just completely ignored the divine aspect of you. And if you ignore your divine aspect, then you ignore your power as a being in the universe. And I know it sounds kind of woo-woo to some folks, but you actually have more control over your reality than you know. And when you become aware of the control that you have over your reality, then you have an ability to affect your reality. But if not, you'll just go along with whatever they have planned for you. Because that's the whole point. They've got your life planned. They have their way, Brother Lynn. They're going to put a chip in everybody and you won't have to go to school.
Yeah.
Because all the information that they want you to have will be fed to you. You know, so with that, who needs teachers?
Yeah.
You know, who needs schools?
Right.
You know, Cleveland school system is struggling right now because they got to close schools because it's not cost efficient to operate buildings that are only at like 10-20% of capacity. You know, you got a shrinking student population. You don't need as many buildings as you had before. Right. So they're struggling with that. But with this plan, you won't need any buildings at all because everybody will just be wired to Neuralink if Elon has his way. And then you can save so much money that the government is spending to support schools. Well, you don't need that anymore. Everybody's got Neuralink.
Yeah, it's upon us, you know, and we really have to be cognizant on it and really deal with the basics, you know, the basics of you know. But again, we come around, we talking culture again. To me, I think that's the thing that's going to solidify and it's going to get us through and save it. And teaching ourselves and understand what's coming down the pipe. We got to look forward. We got to look at this direction. And you got to acknowledge, how you've been cohabitating and who you've been cohabitating with. And it's not been in your best interest. None of this has been in your best interest. And you've been on the bottom of the totem pole all this time and forever. So when are we going to rise up and do something? See, we got to understand it's the unseen that rules the scene. It's the unseen that rules the scene. So it's the spirit world that deals with that reality and changing that reality. When I was in Ghana, Dr. Ankara talked about, what was sacrifice and things of that nature. And you had the spirit God and you had our ancestors. Think about it as a circle. You had God in the middle and around it was the ancestors. And then on the outer circle was the physical world. So with sacrifice, one from the physical realm would elect to go to the spiritual realm because the spiritual realm was closer to God than you, because you were operating on the physical realm with its limitations. So one would elect, or a bird or whatever you would sacrifice would elect to go to the spiritual world to fix your problems on the physical world. So in the Bible, it speaks about it as well. It's the unseen that rules the scene. So you need to be doing whatever we can to go divine within ourselves and tap into that spiritual realm to get those things working for us. Because you got to understand these things are corresponding and with you every day. This unseen world, the colors, through sound, through smells. All of those particular things are affecting you, in one form or another. So we need to know how those things work on you, manipulate you, and everything. You don't think this system has studied those things? They have experimented with people in the prisons and changed the colors and seen it change the behavior. They know what smells do you. That's why in the Bible they talk about frankincense and myrrh and all those particular things. See, but we don't operate like that. We don't operate, and so we avoided those things. And guess what? We suffer the consequences for us not being knowledgeable about that unseen world.
Yeah. Brother Lynn, I want to kind of come back to something we talked about in the previous hour. And that is Kwanzaa.
Mm-hmm.
Because we kind of talked about having amnesia about certain things.
Mm-hmm.
But you also talked about the cultural significance of it. And I think it's really time for us to plug in to what that really means for us as a people. Those 7 principles are things that have a direct relationship to our success or our failure.
That's true. I agree.
So it's just, you look at 7 things that are largely absent in our community, but are a precious commodity.
Mm-hmm.
The first one that comes to mind is unity.
Mm-hmm.
How unified are we? How willing are we to cast aside our differences so that we can work together towards a common goal? I see it in so many different situations and so many different levels. One thing that I look at is the artist community here in Cleveland and how fragmented it is. And the fact that, every genre is dealing with the same issues. The backbiting, the crabs in the barrel mentality, all those things, the lack of communication. If you look at Cuyahoga County overall, you've got a calendar, you've got all these conflicts, and so people go to do things and then they find out that somebody else is doing something on the same day, and so now you split your audience.
Mm-hmm.
we're dealing with the same issues. And partly, even though we live in this age where we have so many ways to communicate with each other, we don't.
Still ain't.
You know, and with the lack of communication, we don't have the unity that we need to move things forward. You look at self-determination. We can't even agree on what to call ourselves.
You out the gate wrong, brother. You out the gate.
You got more saying that you're not this, you're not that. You know, you're African American, you're not that. You got foundational Black Americans. You got, you know, all these different factions. We can't even agree
on what to call ourselves.
On what to call ourselves. You know, when it comes to collective work and responsibility, we don't have any unity within that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we have to work with and for each other for our success. Mm-hmm. When we work together, we can move things forward. When we work against each other, we can't. Mm-hmm. Cooperative economics, same thing. You know, we say it over and over and over again. How long did dollars circulate in our community? Mm-hmm. It's like, as soon as we get the money, we can't wait to give it away. Mm-hmm. You know, we completely ignore the first rule, and that is pay yourself first. You know, set aside that 10% so you can put it into something that's going to grow money, so you can do the same thing that the folks who have money do. But no, we waste money on frivolous things. You know, the sister that's got to have that Louis Vuitton bag or the red bottom shoes, and you know, she looking for the brother that's just gonna just pay for all those things because she want them. You know,
help will pay for.
Well, you know, that's another subject. You know, it's that whole masculine versus feminine, and the sisters are living in masculine energy and trying to understand why they can't find a man, because a man don't want a man, he want a woman. You know, but you operating under that masculine energy, and so it just kind of pushes folks away. But I'm just making a point here, you know, purpose. We lack purpose. We don't even know why we're on the planet. We think we on the planet to work a job so we can pay some bills. That's our purpose, paying bills. You know,
and accumulating things
and buying things. That's our purpose. And that's the purpose that someone else has planned for us. That's not necessarily our real purpose, but you know, that's where we are.
If I own a business and run everything, I want you to buy some stuff. That's for sure.
Exactly. And then you get to creativity.
Creativity and faith.
You know, we are very creative people. We created the world, if you want to look at it in a certain sense, because it was the things that we were knowledgeable about that enabled things to get done. And some of those things can't even be explained today, but it's because we're creative people. And then we have to have faith in each other. You know, I know that if I ask you to do something, it's going to get done. You know, I got faith in you, and vice versa. You know, we have to be able to trust each other. These are the things that enable us to be successful. And these are things that we have to do every day, and not just remember in the last week of the year that, oh, this is what we're supposed to be about. It's got to be part of our program. It really, in essence, Brother Antonio, it has to be the way we program ourselves. You know, because we can let them program us.
There you go. Absolutely.
We can program ourselves.
Absolutely. You're absolutely right. Because here's the thing. Let's say we was to get into some African culture, spirituality, or whatever. Okay. You know, it's a program. It's a cult. You know, it's a way, it's an indoctrination. That's the point I'm trying to say. You know, but, you know, and this system is an indoctrination. But the question is, who indoctrinating you? That is the question. You want some people, almost like, I'm paraphrasing, I forgot how Professor Smalls put it, but we rather follow a culture and a way of life that deals with destruction of nature rather than following a culture and way of life of a people who's trying to live with nature and preserve nature. That's the difference. So what kind of indoctrination that you want to be a part of? That is the question. You know what I mean? So we perfectly fine with that. And what you just described and validated with those principles that you just used with Kwanzaa, all of those things is encompassed in a culture, a group of people having a culture. Culture teaches you all those things that you just mentioned, how to work together, being creative for the community and the culture, having faith, determination, cooperative economic, all of those things you learn from having a culture. That is the glue that for people. What folks got, that's something in my 20s are always how they able to, how other ethnic groups are able to do those things, trust one another, and do those things for themselves and set up institutions and stuff like that for themselves, for just for themselves. You got Polish this, you got Italian this, you got their villages, little Italy and all that stuff for them to preserve their culture, to preserve their way of life and their ideology and way of thinking things. All of that is in the culture. It teaches that. And then when someone violates that culture and go and work outside of that culture and not in the best interest of the people, then he's dealt with or she's dealt with. She's ostracized. You're not able to go and continue that type of misbehavior, economics, whatever that you did into your community, because your name is going to be mud, because the community is tight. And they're going to say, oh, no, don't do business with him. Don't do business with him. Look how they kicked Trump out of New York. Don't do business with him no more, because he's not operating in the best interest of the people. And that's what culture would do for you. And that's why I preach it, because I ran across all the scholars that I have dealt with, and they all agree that culture, that 7-letter word, is important. And that's what the man works so hard to break down from you, of you knowing yourself and self-pride and all that other stuff, that he can't do anything with you, if you are tight culturally like that. So, and that gives power.
Yes. That again is the reason that culture has been erased from our memory bank.
Absolutely. Yes.
It's interesting, brother, how we had a couple of things that happened that kind of woke us up. I think about the film Black Panther.
Mm-hmm.
That movie came out, and all of a sudden people were realizing that they have some kind of relationship. They were seeing it right in front of their faces. But, again, with the indoctrination that we have, it's kind of short-lived. We wore dashikis for about a year, and then we went back to wearing Louis Vuitton.
Marketing.
Yeah. And then then there was that day in Montgomery, the brother in the chairs at the dock. We woke up again, and then we went back to sleep. But again, it's just going back to that psychosis that we deal with, because the program is so powerful. Think about the way that they use music in our society. I'm thinking about campaign events that I went to, the 2016 election, the 2020 election. They always have these different songs, and the songs get you into a certain mindset, and it's like it's their way of programming us. And then, I think about this sometimes, man. Why I can't get this song out of my head. They call it earworm or something like that. But you have a song in your head and you just can't get that song out of your head. It's because we've been programmed. We could be sitting in a room and you could say, plop, plop, fizz, fizz. And everybody in the room says in their head, oh, what a relief it is. Because the program is so effective. And then we have these things called records. And we listen to records, and every time you listen to that record, you go through something that is intended to program you. This morning I'm on my mini trampoline. I got one of those things that you can bound on, and I'm playing More Bounce to the Ounce, right? And it's like you remember every single note. You remember when the break comes because you know the song, because you have been effectively programmed. And so we program each other. But the power in that is that we can create programs that impact us in a positive way. You know, it's like Q People vocal ensemble performing at Kwanzaa the other day, and they were singing, "You have a right to the tree of life. You have a right to the tree of life." And you just let that marinate and resonate with you. This is us using our words to create imagery that's powerful and that gives us authority over ourselves. You know, so what we have to do is we have to be deliberate. We have to be the translators. We have to be the narrative controllers.
Yes.
You know, for so long they've told us that we ain't this and we ain't that and all these other kinds of things, and you will always be a loser and all of that. And so after a while, again, remember, you keep hearing the lie over and over and over again, then you believe it to be true. We can flip that around. We can put ourselves in a place of victory as opposed to putting ourselves in a place of defeat. And I think as we continue to remember who we are, that's how we change this story. You know, I'm so intentional about letting folks know that there are people who are doing meaningful things in our world.
You know, it takes me to Black Panther when you mentioned that. You know, here the difference is, see, you gotta understand. You know, I hope people just watch the show will understand that and they know this, that this sister's been playing and practicing mind control for a very long time. All the stuff that Vince just talked about, he knows this stuff. They've been playing with it in an experiment. They know how to hit you, you know, with subliminal things and put out different stressors or things that get you to respond. They played with all of that. So like Black Panther, we had a little spark. You know, they're not going to let that happen, but so often. But we had a little spark, and it reminds me when you might know Dallas. He played with the Benjamins group or something like that. But he was saying that, you know, when Black Panther came out, they was also inspired. You know, you even had people shave their hair like with the ball. The women shaved their hair like the bald head. But when they greeted each other, they was doing this, you know. But then he was telling me, yeah, man, the brothers was doing this and blah, 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 you know. And he said, but then about a month later, he said, well, it kind of fell to the wayside and blah, blah, blah. I said, no, brother. You know, it just made its point. When you see some positive imagery and some positive stuff, how it can inspire you. It lasted only a month, but guess what? McDonald's don't market you just for a week. They're constantly bombarding you with this thing here. So if you just getting one show a year or two shows a year, it's not going to inspire you for that whole year. You got to have that throughout the day, throughout the week, or something to that nature, constantly re-upping and bombarding you with this positive imagery. You got to constantly see this stuff. You got to see it in your daily. You got to see it in your community. You got to see it in your household. You just can't. It ain't gonna last with one showing, and then that's gonna change all how we think and how we feel about each other. No, he has to be constantly marketed to you, and that's what he does. He markets to you all the time to reinforce that imagery in your mind. You know. So, but it. Guess what? You know, just look at Glenville. You know, they won a state championship again. Them boys is going to be walking on cloud 9 for 2 or 3 weeks or a month, feeling good about themselves.
Hold up. Glenville won a state championship.
Yeah, in football. I think so, yeah.
2 years in a row.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So them young boys is going to feel good about themselves. You know, they're going to probably abstain from getting any trouble. You know, they might drink too much to celebrate and they get into trouble or something or whatever. But internally, they're going to feel good about themselves. They accomplished something. So I'm a true believer. You feel better about yourself, you do better. And our job with, when I was talking about starting the image campaign of going around the city and even just putting positive yard signs in people's, on people's properties. As the little kids is walking through school, they see something positive about themselves. They see, you driving, put those signs out there where you can see when you driving. That's why when we talked about, I think last week, like I say, when I do shows or whatever, I stop in the middle of the show and gotta drop something positive, something positive. Use that time, use that function to drop something positive, to our people, because our people need it. So it's all about reinforcement. That's the point I'm trying to make. The movie. How did you feel? You feel good about Soldier Story and all these particular stuff, like when Townsend was saying, "Okay, I'm ready to get started. Now we've made a movie." They said, "No, you only get a black movie once a year, and that's it." You know what I mean? And that's why, in closing, that's why they make sure they control the narrative on the music industry, because that's why all that, KRS-One type of stuff, get rid of all of that, because we don't want no positive reinforcement.
Yeah. Well, a couple of things, and I really applaud the idea of positive imagery. I think there is a place for it within our civic structure to create that paradigm.
Sure.
We have public art. We don't have the funding that we should have. We're looking at changing that paradigm. There are conversations about what's being done in other cities and looking at the possibility of bringing those kinds of things here. I watched a video yesterday, and I think this is something that's going on in New York, but they're lifting up sisters, and it's African-American sisters, it's Latina sisters, but they're creating sculptures of them. And the whole intent behind putting up these sculptures is for people to be exposed to who these figures are and to understand their history. So as you were saying, every time the child walks by that, they see it, it serves as a point of inspiration for them. So, just looking at Cleveland and looking what happened within the past couple of years with the Transformative Art Fund and other things that have been created and implemented, we can see that there is power in the art. And that's one of the reasons that I personally have been advocating for a line item budget for art in the city of Cleveland. If it's good enough for Philadelphia, if it's good enough for San Antonio, if it's good enough for some of the other cities in this country, then it's good enough for us, and then we can employ artists to create those kinds of works that you're talking about. It's not going to just happen. It takes intentionality. It takes people coming together and saying, look, let's do this, and figuring out a plan. Just like in the city of Cleveland and Cuyahoga County, we're looking at a strategic plan for the arts. This is something that's very necessary and vital, because the arts stimulate the economy. Back during the pandemic, in 1 year, there was $500 million that were contributed to our local economy through the arts. $500 million, $500 million through the arts. So there is a case for making more economic viability by promoting the arts. So right now, they're creating a music commission here in Cuyahoga County. The issue that I have with it right now is that it's something that benefits venue owners, but doesn't provide a direct benefit to musicians. And that has to change, because without the musicians, you don't have any live music, so you got to compensate musicians fairly for what they do, and not just be thinking about your bottom line, because we got a bottom line too. So lots of things that can be done, but we have to come together and we have to walk through and talk through possible solutions so that we can change the paradigm. That's really what it's all about. It's about intentionality. And I do think, Brother Hamtonio, that we can see that positive image campaign. We can do it. We just have to create that conversation in the right circles to see it
Mhm.
come into fruition.
Because you can see how impactful that is. Imagery is on our children. Look how they emulate what they see. You can see them holding guns sideways like this because they see it on television. They see the images. You know what I mean? So our problem is that we're not putting enough imagery out there to counteract all the negative imagery that they're getting. And so my plans was initially when we did it, when we was talking about it, is to get that and then take that to the next phase, you know, and then taking it to the next phase of having your community raise up and say, guess what? FCC, we want to regulate what's being played on our radio. You know, all this negative effing and all this old type of stuff. We don't want that. We don't want that. You know, we want to control that what's being heard and what's being played in our community. That's the next level that you can take that with it. Then attack our schools with that as well. So you know, it all leads with the conscience. You got to understand the purpose, and your consciousness has to be on the right page of understanding what is the end goal and what are you trying to do. You know, and so again, you know, through the substance abuse arena, what they say, you gotta first recognize that you got a problem before healing can take place. So I don't think enough of us recognize it to a certain degree that would motivate them to move and to do something. You know, we got to collect it. So you got to start with the consciousness, you know, the consciousness and understanding that, okay, we gotta raise the type of person that would pass 10 stores to go and drop their money at a black owned business and don't even mind paying even more for the same item. Are we raising that type of people in our community? No. You know, that's doing something with a purpose. That's understanding that goal and your mission. And so it may not be everybody. And what kept me going from and this long is that understanding that it never was the masses. It always was the few who made the decision for the masses. So if we collectively got together with our talented 10 and put together, like I said earlier, like that village, and we got all these spokes in the wheels that help that we can go to and seek all our needs out, our medical, our economic, our spiritual, all that is in this village. And then we can start growing and people will start, you know, and then we can have our own indoctrination to our kids. And we will understand that we need after school programs to zero down on who we are and what we are. And then we can start trying to make a difference.
Yeah. Well, I think it really kind of starts within the home.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, it takes parents being intentional. It takes man and woman raising children and not one or the other, but both, because, you know, children, they learn from their parents, you know, and so many young boys, they don't have a father to look up to model behavior in terms of how they treat the mother. You know, what we have is a lot of mothers bad mouthing fathers, and the child grows up with a certain sense of resentment because the father's not there. And I'm not saying that this is the rule rather than the exception, because there are a lot of responsible Black fathers out there. But, you know, one of the things that hurt us the most was the destruction of our family culture in this country. You know, there was a time when the most married people in this country were us.
Yep.
You know, grandma, grandpa, they stuck together, couldn't stand each other, but they stayed together because they wanted to keep the family together.
They know that. They know that. You know, what's the African proverb? The ruin of a nation begins in the homes of his people. So they know, break that family up and you ain't going nowhere.
Oh, yeah.
You as a race of people, you're not going anywhere.
Yeah, and they've done that effectively. So when you look at this country, the most educated entity in America is sisters, Black women. They are the most educated people in this country.
Yeah.
And then you look at who's the most incarcerated, and that's brothers.
that seemed like that don't go together, brother.
But think about it. If you want to destroy the family, you take the man out the house. And if he's sitting in a prison somewhere, how can he be an effective father?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You know, that's the history of this country. And I would say that it's probably like that in other places, but specifically here, you've got, and then this goes back to rites of passage. We had Baba Paul Hill on a few weeks ago. Young men grow up without understanding what their purpose in society is. They think selfishly, and it's impacting sisters, because the sisters are looking around and they're like, well, where are the brothers? That back in the day there was something called courting. You remember that, Lynn?
A little series, something called court?
No, just courting. My grandmother.
Courting. Oh yeah. Okay. You're right.
So you would lock in on somebody, you liked them, you bring them flowers, you send them cards, you take them out on dates. You got to know that person, you got to know
and the parents.
I was gonna say,
okay.
Get to know the parents. You gotta have a good relationship with her father, because her father, he don't want his daughter going to just anybody. He want to make sure that you're responsible, that you were capable of taking care of her needs and all. That was back in the day. Yeah. So we used to court. Now women are complaining because men don't take them out on dates anymore. It's like Netflix and chill. So we have to be responsible, brothers. Be responsible. Treat the sisters like
and all of that. Again, what you say, you can lump into some type of cultural way of doing something. You know what I mean? And again, another thing that we lost, we lacking, and that's why I talk about it. Most of the time, all the time, we got to. It's. I think that's one of the keys. I've done some heavy thinking on it, and that's one of the missing links. That common entity, that common culture, so, and it would teach us all those things that we need to know, that would help us along and unifying to some type of common goal and understanding. And one thing that, not to get the sisters to, I don't want them to jump on me, but what could happen when you got a situation, like you said, you moving up, you have the education, and now the brothers, see, first you got to understand, this system over here is the battle is between the alpha black man and the alpha white man. You have to understand that's the fight. They not really looking at the sisters at this time as that big threat. He got a problem with something like what Dr. Francis Quest would say, this whole masculine thing, would be between two males. It's a male situation. It's no doubt to understand it. It's the white male that is running this country. You see that. And so he's threatened by the black male. So our sisters need to understand that some latitude is going to be given you. Of course, there's some glass ceilings for women, just like in the police industry. There's, and they didn't want a woman to be president and stuff like that. But far as threatening them and being fearful of them, that's different than being so chauvinist. You understand? There's a total difference. So they don't fear the woman in that. I'm saying all that to say she needs to know that. She needs to be the spook who sat by the door. If he's gonna let her in and close to them, she got to disseminate the information. Because he got he got both of his foot on the brother's neck. So you can't adapt that kind of philosophy, I don't need a man situation, because you're successful now. You can't do that, because that's all about balance. You're just going against what God's nature is. Everything is about yin and yang here, and you can't have one side without the other. So that's going to further perpetuate the fall and the dysfunction of our community, because you're out of balance.
Yes, my art. So important, and again, taking us back to our history and our culture. We have an awareness of all the things that it takes for us to be successful. And what we have to do is just embrace being ourselves. We accepted someone else's religion. We accepted someone else's definition of who and what we are. I mean, it was law, 3/5 human. We were property. We weren't even considered human, not full human, not even to speak of our divinity, but not even human. We've come a long way with that, but still we're subject to what they have written. They still have to give us permission to vote every so often. Those documents are still in place, and we've got folks that they're working feverishly to undermine all the so-called progress that we've made in this country. But it still comes back to money as the bottom line. It still comes back to the control that they want to exert over us. It still comes back to them taking away the ability that we have to change the destiny that they have planned for us. But when we come together, we can change that. We have the power to change our condition, and we can't sit around and wait for them to voluntarily do it. For them to all of a sudden wake up and be contrary to their nature. You talked about how they've been the destroyers of nature for all this time. Like they're just going to wake up one day and think, oh, okay, well, I'm going to be a more compassionate custodian of the planet Earth. I'm going to stop tearing down the Amazon rainforests and, pulling all the minerals out of the earth and all the petroleum, all the things that they're doing to upset the balance of nature. They're not going to just wake up. Fact of the matter is, we got to do it for them because they won't do it for themselves.
Absolutely. I totally agree. So that's telling you. I wrote something that's saying how the new kids on the block is going to tell the old kids on the block anything. If you got a household and you take the children out, you take the adults out the house and let the children run it, it's just a matter of time. There's going to be dysfunction in that house because they don't know how to run the thing. They don't know how to take care of it. So look at it. Look at everything that you just mentioned around you, the water, the air, the food, everything is jacked up because you're letting the children run the show. The newcomers run the show. There's another African proverb that say, you don't teach the path of the forest to an old gorilla. He been there. He know it. How you going to teach him something about life, God, spirituality, family, children, how to raise the children? How you going to do that, to an old comer who's been around here for thousands of years and been through all these issues that you are having right now, these common issues that you are having right now. That's why I say, do the Sankofa. Look back into the culture and learn how, because this is definitely working for you because you're on the bottom of the totem pole almost on every front. On every front.
By design.
Yes. So how can you? So I'm going to get in trouble right now. I'm going to say this and then we can close out. How can I stand up strongly and recite the Pledge of Allegiance and wear, Star Spangled Banner clothes and go through all those particular things when the history has been, you've been struggling for every civil right that you can get and still getting dogged out. Do that make you feel it don't make me feel patriotic. Let me say that. Let me speak for myself. Yeah. All right. All I've known since I've been growing up and hearing about the inequalities and the inequities and the bad things that's been going on to you and your people, and we haven't even crossed and know them all at this particular point because a lot of stuff is being hidden and just coming out of all the secret experiments and the things that they've done over there. Illinois I think it was Illinois or Indiana, put gas out there in the project community. They kids running through a fog, and they admitted it was out there. They was testing on the people out there, but won't tell them what it is. Now these people coming out with cancer and all the rest of that stuff, all the evils that has been done. So how you gonna walk around with your flag? I love the country. What is wrong with you? But me, let me talk. I'm talking about me. Okay, that's a problem with me. That's why I admire people like Colin Kaepernick. Okay. who risked his career and saying this is wrong, you know. And we need more people to stand up like that and say this is wrong, you know. So me personally, so I'm saying all that to say, when somebody talk about Camp Sankofa and looking back to see what your ancestors did, you should be willing and open to look for a new way of doing something, because evidently this ain't working for you. It's not been in your best interest. So that's why me and Dr. Wicker talk about it has to be mental. It has to be some mental illness here, that we are still romanticizing this system that hasn't been good to you from the beginning. And we still in love and won't be open to some other new suggestions on how to do something. That's why it's so deep. And we adamantly fight somebody if you try to change. What Carter G. Woodson say, we got Black History Month coming up. You know, once you control a man's mind, you ain't got to worry about his actions. He go through a back door without you telling him. And if one ain't there, he'll make a back door. That's some serious mental manipulation right there, buddy.
George Clinton had a word for it back in the day. It was called pro-mental shit backwash psychosis enema squad.
Whoa. Man, say that again. Say that again.
Pro-mental shit backwash psychosis enema squad.
Whoa, Jack.
I'm trying to remember what album that was on. I want to say it was on Uncle Jam Wants You. But it may have been it was a Funkadelic album that came before that. But I'll never forget that. Pro-mental shit backwash psychosis enema squad. There's a lot in that. But you know, it just comes back to the need, and you stated it so eloquently. It's the need for us to program ourselves.
Yes.
It's the need for us to embrace the blueprint that the ancestors provided for us. Yes. And to execute that, and for us to understand that the reason that we exist is to carry out the mission that they started. That's where that whole idea of purpose comes into play. So when everybody determines what their purpose is and they live within that purpose, that's how we move forward, as opposed to being the subjects that do what they want us to do. And not what we need to do. You know, so
subject of total manipulation. That's it.
That's it. Totally manipulated. You know, and we're gonna wind down, but I'm just thinking about all the things that we deal with. You know, like right now, there's this whole controversy about the stadium moving from one place to another. But we're not looking at the ways that we're exploited so they can carry out whatever designs that they have. You have a football game downtown. You got parking meters that have hoods on them that are telling you that you can't park at the meter. They force you to park in a parking lot where you're paying $20, $30, $40, $50 to park your car. They're exploiting you. And then you leave the game and you go to the restaurant and you pay high prices for food that's going to kill you. You know, it's almost like, if you really understand what's going on, they're doing you a favor. When they take that poison that they call food off your plate, they're doing you a favor when they force you to grow your own food that's not poisoned. They're doing you a favor, and you looking the gift horse in the mouth. You know, but the bottom line is that we have to take responsibility for ourselves and not allow others to have responsibility over us. That's really what it comes down to. You gonna let them dictate how you live, or you going to determine how you live?
Come on. It'll be cool if you was following somebody that was righteous and have a good track record. It might be okay.
Right.
But you follow somebody that ain't got a good track record. So why is you doing that? And the last thing I'm gonna say, when you said that, we might be kissing the gift horse in the mouth. You know, with him, that's right, my brother. There's definitely Stockholm syndrome. Absolutely. With the Africans, you know, with him putting those bans on Africans and not allowing them to come, that's a blessing. That's a blessing. So America don't have to get our talent anymore. They have to stay at their own home countries and develop those countries, you know. You always, running here to the West, running here to the West for that indoctrination. We just talked about the indoctrination. All they're going to do is come over here and be indoctrinated into the American way and forget about their own culture. That's not a good thing. Look down at their own people. Like you just said, the Stockholm Syndrome. When you get in power, you act the same way that you've been taught, like your oppressors. You see what I'm saying? So, so by them Africans not being able to travel here, that's forcing them to do what? Stay home and develop their own nation, because Africa is a new frontier. They just don't see it now. So they're going to be right on time for the development, and that can be divine order.
Absolutely. Want to just shout out Miss Brenda, who made the comment about Stockholm Syndrome. And yes, that's exactly what it is. Shout out to Brother Gerard, who has been viewing us on YouTube, and everyone who has watched us on Facebook and LinkedIn. We appreciate you showing up today and participating in this program. We'll be back with another show next Saturday, and we'll be back with some guests and bring you some value in terms of our programming. Thank you for hanging out with us. Don't forget, if you haven't already done so, subscribe to our YouTube channels. You can subscribe to The Journey with Antonio on YouTube. You can also subscribe to my YouTube channel, Vince Robinson. Again, we really appreciate. Don't forget, hit the notification bell, and you will get alerts when we post content on our respective channels. As always, know yourself, love yourself, be yourself. Make today your absolute best day. Peace, y'all.
Peace.